Chapter 4. We stepped off Blackstone's private jet in cloudy fog-ridden San Francisco. A limo driver texted Joshua. We quickly found him and we were off to our destination. I tagged along with him. After all, he was the executive, and I was promised a job editing a newsletter and writing pieces for Blackstone's online publications to promote oil drilling. Stopping at the door of a luxurious apartment with the Golden Gate Bridge as part of the scenery, our bags were handed to the doorman, and he quickly placed them in the apartment before we reached the 8th floor. The carpet, lush and high, lined the Italian marble walkway, glowed throughout the building. Incredible! Joshua's gaze wandered and he said, "I can get used to this. An apartment, six-figure income to manage Blackstone's properties, and all because I know you." "What do you mean?" "The only reason Blackstone gave me a large salary is because he hopes I will tell him something about you." "He probably forgot about me." "Well, I sure hope he has, because it will make it much easier to do what I need to do," I said with a weak heart. Walking through the apartment, there were 2 bedrooms which were perfect. Modern furniture, no antiques. I fell across the bed and could not move, and fell asleep because of the time change. I woke the next day, and we decided to go for a walk to see the city. We needed some coffee and straggled into the nearest pub, which was opened all hours, selling cappuccino, a drink with chocolate brandy and steamed milk, served in the mornings, and by night you could get a good dark beer and a Manhattan. Plopping down in a booth in the corner of the restaurant, suddenly a pair of green eyes attached to a familiar, handsome face turned in our direction. I hit Joshua on the arm. "He's coming this way," I whispered. "Who?" A reflex action took over, and Joshua raised his menu in front of his face. Before I could leave the booth and tell Joshua that our boss was standing in front of us, I was facing him. "Excuse me, but I think I know you from somewhere." "Yes, you, love of my life, you rich handsome fuck, who buried your face between my legs and left me with the taste of your dick in my mouth and fucked me every which way but loose. You treated me like a whore. Yes, you do know me, you sexy bastard." I wanted to say all those things, but I didn't. "I'm sorry, I've never met you." I smiled, flicking my ponytail, lowering my eyes, sitting and slumping into my seat. He never looked at Joshua because Joshua had his head turned to the wall with the menu covering his face. "I would like to speak to you when you're alone." "I'm very seldom alone." "I see that you're not married." "And what makes you come to such a hasty conclusion?" "You're not wearing a wedding ring or engagement ring," he countered. "Well, are you a detective or a serial killer?" He shook his head, tilting it to the side, and smiled. "Neither." His sparkling green eyes glowed, and then he let out a wonderful subdued laugh. I hadn't seen that side of him. He knew how to take a joke. Let's see how he handles the joke I'm getting ready to play on him. "Here's my card," he stated, trying to meet my diverted gaze. "I'll be waiting for your call." I looked up. He held the card out, staring into my eyes, as if he could put me in a trance. I had been in his trance from the first moment I met him, and clearly I still was because I took the card from his hand. He had accomplished what he wanted. Turning, he strode back to his booth and out of the door with a man who had been waiting at the bar. No doubt a bodyguard. Through the picture window, I saw an attendant standing in front of an exotic silver sports car with the door ajar. My Mr. Black, the fuck of my life, my sexual mentor, slipped into it with ease and drove off. "Did you see that?" He not only didn't remember me, he was after another conquest with the same person. He can't remember the women he seduced and screwed. I sat brimming with anger, hitting the spoon on the table, wishing I had slapped his face instead. "I couldn't see anything but that $2.5 million Bugatti," Joshua noted in awe. He paused, giving in to a moment of hero worshipping. "Alex, if you don't do this right, you could cost me my position and my job with Blackstone Industries, and I like this job. You will have to assume your other persona, and please tell me I don't need surprises. I have to commit that to memory and all the other bullshit you are planning. I'm a part of this nonsense now." It may be nonsense to you, but I need to do this. He likes fast cars. And how did you know that car cost 2.5 million? I wonder if he likes fast women, I said, passing my finger over my cheek, studying the possibilities. That car was in the New York Times. Alex, there's talk among the employees that he's into bondage and S&M. What are you hoping to accomplish? He could be dangerous. Men with that kind of money and sex habits are dangerous. What do you know about BDSM, Josh? About as much as you. I need to do this, Josh. I want him to hurt like I have. If he's into bondage, then you will hurt more than him. A powerful rich man is seldom out of control, so watch your ass. Joshua laughed with relish at his own words. From my limited knowledge of BDSM, I read that once he penetrated me, he could not come back for more. But he did come back again and again in one night, and he bonded with me and tried to erase the bond by staying away. Joshua listened with interest, leaning in to capture every word. You appear to be serious about that BDSM thing. Are you sure you want to cross that line? Remember, when you dig one grave for someone, dig one for yourself, Joshua said, staring me down. Yes, I'm crossing that line, I stated with lack of reservation. You know about Alexander Bishop. Now it's time for you to get you acquainted with Ms. Rebecca Johns. She's a bleached blonde specializing in BDSM. And on her day off, she wears tight, seductive clothes, where she enjoys receiving and giving pain. I haven't decided if I am the dom or sub, but that will come later. Her family lives in Washington State, however. She previously resided in upstate New York, is a college graduate, and was hired by the personnel department in one of Blackstone's companies in New York City. We met on Blackstone's Learjet, and you invited me to share an apartment with you. You are not privy to my extracurricular activities. Joshua raised an eyebrow. I'm trying to protect you, my friend. Rolling his eyes and shaking his head, he said, anything else I should know? And what do you know about bondage? What I don't know, I can learn. You already have a full-time job, or have you forgotten that? Yes, my full-time job is getting that handsome, beautiful sick fuck to fall passionately in love with Rebecca. I want to drive him mad. I want him to obsess behind me until he loses his mind. Be careful what you wish for, Joshua said, laughing. The clock beeped at 6 a.m. Monday, I dressed early to get a good start, where I can become acclimated to the city. Checking the city map, to my surprise, the main office of Blackstone Enterprises was in walking distance from the apartment. Dressed in a black knockoff designer suit, and a white shirt with cuffs, a string of white pearls, a pair of black designer pumps, and an expensive black Prada purse that cost a fortune, I felt like $1 million. In a briefcase, I concealed my black 6-inch pumps. I set out for my first day on the job with knots in my stomach. Strolling to the glass silver structure with Blackstone emblazoned over the entrance, I lumbered through the door. Turning in circles, stopping to look up at the large chandeliers hanging in the lobby, incredible, I thought. After making a few steps, the elevator opened and out strut my Mr. Black, carrying a black briefcase and a phone firmly in his hand. He obviously had a meeting because he had on his signature black suit with white shirt and his prep school tie. I looked at his feet, and he was without his Gucci loafers. Instead, he wore a pair of bespoke black Italian shoes. When I raised my head, he paused, then he turned in my direction, continuing his conversation with his eyes appraising and scanning my body. His expression signaled, "Where have I seen you, and I want to fuck you." The elevator eased to a stop. I stood staring him down. My face and eyes said, "Whatever you want, I'm here to give it to you." Discovering I could hide the real me under a blonde wig, false eyelashes, makeup, and moderately expensive clothing set me free. I could be who I wanted. Maybe I wasn't Alex. Maybe I was someone else. Seducing him with a devilish smile, showing no teeth, watching him breathing hard, turning my back to him facing the elevator, feeling his burning stare, turning around, I flashed a wink and a full smile. By the way he stood in that one spot, I knew he was mine. The elevator came, I stepped in, and his bodyguard touched his arm. I could see that Mr. Black was annoyed at the closing of the elevator door. His hungry, yearning green eyes spelled danger, but I wouldn't heed the signs and I plowed straight ahead with my plans. When I reached the 26th floor, which took a second, I got off with my ears ringing and my head swirling. "Hi, and you are?" I gave my papers to the pretty secretary at the front desk. She glanced up at me, lifting her eyebrows and twisting her pretty face with suspicion and with contempt. "Please come with me, Miss Johns." She walked me through another set of doors, with a guard sitting at the desk. Waving at him, he allowed us to go on to another section. "This is your office, Ms. Johns. Your secretary will be in to acquaint you with your duties." My secretary? Well, no one said that I would have a secretary. The young woman, about 22, black hair and blue eyes, turned around looking in my eyes. "If you need to speak to Mr. Blackstone, you can relate the message to me or your secretary. My name is Ms. Corday." And she turned coldly in her high heels and headed in the direction of her desk. That will be the day," I murmured. A woman of 40 came into my office. She knew her place and she appeared to have no feelings about me or Mr. Black. Perhaps she had no inclinations or desires for him, which was not so obvious with the young woman who sat at the welcome desk. She appeared to have had a piece of him and wanted more. It had taken my secretary the whole day to explain my duties, which were research and editing reports on the various entities of Blackstone Industries. Once I completed each binder, I had to hand it over to my secretary, and she would edit it as well. It was a secluded job, not tiring, but no contact with others. My lunch was controlled because it was brought in. At 4 I heard footsteps and someone entering the large office attached to mine. After 15 minutes, a knock came to the door, and without a word, Mr. Black strutted into my office. Sitting behind my desk, head lowered, glancing over tomorrow's assignment, I glanced up, and there stood my Mr. Black, so handsome, so exciting, and so fuckable. "Ms. Johns, I am?" "I know who you are, sir." "You are my employer, Mr. Blackstone," I said with my professional voice, trying to determine if he wanted a dom or sub. I stood and walked to shake his hand as stern and hard as I could. Not with the wimpy handshake I wanted to give him. "You have a strong handshake." "Thank you. I like when a man can appreciate a strong handshake from a woman. It shows that she likes to be in charge," he said with a sexy smirk, causing dimples to make a large dent in his cheeks. Oh, that told me everything. He wants a dom, or is he just testing me? "I was hoping you would join me for dinner." He threaded his fingers through his tempting curly locks. Remembering the day I threaded my fingers through his hair gave me a tingle between my legs. "Do you have a habit of taking your help to dinner?" "Only if they are as attractive and sexy as you." "Mr. Blackstone, that can be construed as sexual harassment." "Go ahead, sue me. I can afford it." He smiled, then it turned into a sly, mischievous grin. "I assure you, you will have a better time if you just agree to have dinner with me. He's a persistent bastard when he wants something. I guess that's why he's a billionaire," I thought. "I'm sorry, Mr. Blackstone, but I have a previous engagement." I walked around to my desk to take off my heels and put on my walking shoes. Bending down, changing my shoes, I heard him say, "Did you read the writer and the fine print on the contract?" He turned and disappeared without saying more. I bit my nails, which didn't have the same effect as biting my real nails. At least he didn't press me further. Who reads the fine print on contracts, I thought. Not I. Not I. I heard his office door open and close, and I began packing my company's iPad and iPhone. Closing my door, I headed for the elevators. They finally stopped on the ground level, and I rushed for the revolving door. I saw a midnight blue Rolls-Royce setting in front at the curb with Mr. Black leaning on his door with his legs crossed, wearing a dark blue turtleneck with dark slacks hanging perfectly on his glorious hips, held up with an alligator belt, and those Gucci loafers on his feet. He had plans for me, and I hadn't thought enough ahead to outwit this shrewd, handsome fuck. After all, it was my first day, couldn't he give me a break? You look tired and hungry, Ms. Johns. Would you like a ride home? I live around the corner. I can find my way. Thank you, Mr. Blackstone, but I have a date. I started walking and he followed me. His driver drove off. The street was a one-way, and we were headed in the opposite direction. He paused, then asking, "Do you have a date with a young man?" "No, with an old man. I like them old." I raised my eyebrow and gave him a wink. "Like me?" he asked, stopping me with a slight grasp of my arm. "No, you're too young." His brow furrowed. He didn't want to continue, so he changed the subject. "You shouldn't walk alone." I looked up at him and said, "I'm not alone." He smiled, and I saw an ease and warmth brush his strong, clean-shaven, handsome face. I felt the warmth ease through my body, the way I saw him when he gazed into my eyes and said that he loved me. Was that his usual rap for all the virgins he deflowered? I couldn't have been the only one that he professes love for, but I would like to think that I was. "A penny for your thoughts, Ms. Johns." "Only a penny, Mr. Blackstone? How about if I make it more and put it in your pay?" "I still wouldn't tell you what I'm thinking. A body needs some privacy, besides you can't bribe me." I glanced up at the building and announced, "I'm home." If I remember precisely, this is one of my apartments. The sign read Blackstone Apartments in LED lights. "One of your hotel managers is my roommate." "A male or female?" "A male." "Is he your lover?" "I don't think this is an appropriate conversation, and I don't care to explain to you, Mr. Blackstone." A smile crossed his face. He was as much surprised as I was at my words. "Call me Max?" "Well, Max, thank you for walking me home." I extended my hand and he pressed his face next to mine, and our lips found each other, and there we stood outside kissing like teenagers. A hot kiss seared my lips. His tongue sliced through my mouth and I sucked it in and began sucking it hard. His breathing accelerated, and I felt his heart, and I knew he was attracted to Rebecca, the way he had been attracted to Alex 3 years ago. I felt Mr. Black's hands bring me into his hard, muscular body. I felt the flex of his muscular arms pressing me closer and closer. I felt him, all of him, rise and pulsate against my warm vagina. I smelled his scent. There's nothing like the smell of Tom Ford's Noir fragrance to make you lose all your inhibitions. I couldn't help myself. Limp and a moment from fainting in his arms, I got control of myself. But his hands moved from my waist to my behind. He wasn't surprised that I allowed so much familiarity without protest. He acted as if he expected it. With one hand behind my back, he whispered in my ear, "I want to smell your pussy. I need that, and I need to be your slave." He took my virginity and taught me about oral sex. Now he is preparing me for BDSM. I wonder what next? From my limited knowledge of BDSM, he was not supposed to kiss me or get personally involved, if he is the dom. He did say he wanted to be my slave. I smiled at the thought. "I need to go. I'll see you tomorrow, Mr. Blackstone." Prying my body from his arms, I strutted away from him and through the large glass door, and didn't turn until I reached the elevators. Swiveling around on my low heels, he was standing looking at me like a sex-starved schoolboy. Then a sly smile crossed his face, he tilted his head to the side, then strode in the direction of his rolls. The chauffeur opened the door and he glided in. I didn't want him taking the role of gentleman, which he had initiated when first I met him. Then he could do what he wanted, and I was left wishing and wanting him to call. This time would be different. Opening the door to our apartment, I couldn't wait to tell Joshua. "Where are you, Joshua?" I searched around in his bedroom, in the kitchen, and finally the terrace. He had a glass of wine in his hand, and another empty glass waiting for me. "Pour me one. I have something to tell you." "Do you see that bridge?" He said, words slurring. "I'm going to commit suicide if you fuck this up, Alex. I'm getting inquiries already about our relationship." Already, I just left Mr. Black. I said, surprised by the news and surprised by Joshua's misplaced concerns. This morning, at the new hotel, I saw him whispering to someone, and then he came over and spoke to me. His voice cold and stern when he asked about you, I mean Rebecca. I can't keep all those names in my head. I thought he was asking about you, Alex, the real you, not that blonde slut you're pretending to be. Well, what happened, Joshua? You never tell a straight story. He asked if I was fucking you. Just like that. I didn't expect that, especially from a man in his position. What have you done to him? He's a man and he's into me. Things are about to get interesting. Alex, do you know that you have a clause in your employment that has something to do with BDSM? You need to know what you're in for. I rolled my eyes. I don't think you are aware of what is expected from that job. I can handle it. What could be wrong with a little dirty talk with your dream man and a little sex? It's not like it's new to me. Don't worry. You're in uncharted waters, Alex. Taking time to read the fine print, I thought nothing of it. He expected to have a little dirty talk and BDSM. I knew a little of BDSM, I goggled it. Besides, it didn't matter. I would be doing it with the love of my life. I figured that I could talk dirty with Blackstone, and I would have the last laugh when I confronted him with the truth.